Welcome to the Channel 2 Wars. The penal units of the Soviet Army were created in 1941 to 1942 for those who, while serving in the army, committed any crimes against Soviet authority, command, or the people, for which the punishment did not include execution. Penal units were sent based on the decision of a military tribunal for a term established during the tribunal's session. In this video, I will tell you what kind of weapons were provided to the penal soldiers in the USSR and how to get into a penal battalion. During that time, it was relatively easy to end up in a penal battalion. One could sabotage military activities, repeatedly violate discipline, or commit breaches of military subordination, including physical assault on the command staff and threats against the authorities of the Soviet state. To say that the conditions in the penal battalions were nissacker is to say nothing at all. At that time, the entire Red Army was in such conditions. They were usually sent there for a period of 3 to 4 months, but many returned to their units after just a couple of weeks or even days. Indeed, for the most part, they were wounded, which was considered a redemption of guilt before the party and the people with their own blood, and in rarer cases for special distinction in military actions. By the way, there is a misconception that penal battalions and penal companies existed only in the USSR. In reality, similar units were also present in the Wehrmacht. What were the penal battalions armed with? Contrary to the common belief about the meager equipment of the penal units, the armament of the penal soldiers was no different from that of the main units. For example, a penal battalion typically consisted of 3 rifle companies, with each squad expected to have a light machine gun. The other soldiers in the unit were equipped with Mosin rifles and either PPSH or PPD submachine guns. The battalion also included a company of anti-tank soldiers armed with anti-tank rifles, as well as a mortar company equipped with 82mm guns. Support weapons often included Maxim machine guns, but penal soldiers were also frequently equipped with more modern Goryanov machine guns. Here is what a participant in those events, who was in the penal battalion, writes.
Our battalion was constantly being supplied with new weapons in sufficient quantities. We already had the new PPSH submachine guns, which were not yet widely used in the troops, instead of the PPD. We received new anti-tank rifles PTRS, also known as Semenov, with a 5-round magazine. In general, we never experienced a shortage of weapons.
Now let's take a closer look at the armament. The Mosin rifle was adopted into service during the Tsarist army and remains a formidable weapon in skilled hands to this day. Personally, I dream of adding it to my collection. The good range and accuracy of fire allowed one of its modifications to be used as a sniper weapon, and its ease of use earned it a good reputation among soldiers. The Dekirov submachine gun PPD became the first serial submachine gun produced in the USSR. The relatively low rate of fire and the use of a sufficiently powerful 7.62 by 25 cartridge ensured good shooting accuracy. Additionally, most of the components of the submachine gun had a cylindrical shape, which allowed them to be manufactured on almost any lathe. However, the production of machine guns progressed rather slowly, and the quality of assembly was frankly lacking, which subsequently led to its removal from service due to identified shortcomings. The recently started Winter War forced the rapid refinement of the PPD and the urgent equipping of the Red Army units with them. But on December 21, 1940, the PPD was removed from mass armament due to the adoption of the PPSH, the Goryanov machine gun, or SG-43. After the victory of the Red Army in the Battle of Moscow, the question of creating a lighter version of the Maxim machine gun became urgent. A competition was announced in May 1942, and exactly 1 year later, the SG-43 machine gun was adopted by the Red Army. During the Great Patriotic War, 80,000 copies of this weapon were produced. The Shpagin submachine gun was adopted into service as part of the program to replace the PPD in December 1941, which I have already mentioned. It had several design features that distinguished it from the previous submachine gun. For example, the position of the magazine was made slightly higher, which reduced the shooter's profile in the trench. The more technological design allowed for a significant reduction in labor costs for producing a single unit, which greatly increased overall production. The increased rate of fire created a greater density of fire but consumed ammunition more quickly. All of this allowed the army to be equipped with automatic weapons in the shortest possible time with minimal costs to the state. This is what made the PPSH the most widely used submachine gun of World War II. Overall, the PPSH honorably served throughout the war and remained in mass production until around the 1960s. In several countries, the submachine gun is still in service to this day. The Dekirov light machine gun, or DP, was developed in 1924 and, after undergoing various tests, was officially adopted on December 21, 1927. But this did not stop the designer, and he continued to use various design solutions to improve the characteristics of his creation. The machine gun received its combat baptism. In 1929, during the conflict on the Chinese Eastern Railway, its combat path continued all the way until 1946, when it was replaced by the company machine gun RP-46. According to veterans' memories, the DP was an excellent weapon, convenient to use, unpretentious, and easy to operate and maintain. The machine gun turned out to be so successful that the Germans, who had far better weaponry, held a good opinion of it. The last modification of the machine gun occurred in 1944. When the problem of overheating the recoil spring was resolved, the design of the trigger mechanism was improved, and the issue of changing the barrel in combat conditions was addressed. The rifle grip was also changed to a pistol grip. The stock took on a slightly different shape and became smaller, and the bipods became integral. The DP can confidently be called one of the best options for support weapons. Its relatively low weight, increased reliability, and decent accuracy, along with easy magazine loading and resistance to contamination, fully justify considering the machine gun as one of the best representatives of its class. The Degtyarev and Semenov anti-tank rifles, PTRD and PTRS, anti-tank rifles were used as early as the end of World War I. During the interwar period, they gained widespread use due to the ever-expanding list of large-caliber machine guns. But during World War II, anti-tank rifles were able to show their true potential. German tankers respected the rifle that could immobilize a formidable machine with a single shot. Of course, with the modernization of existing tanks and the emergence of new anti-tank rifles, they gradually lost their effectiveness, but even then they remained a formidable opponent to armored vehicles. Structurally, the Degtyarev and Semenov rifles are virtually indistinguishable, except for the presence of a 5-round magazine on the PTRS, which allows for a correspondingly higher rate of fire. But the PTRD was simpler and cheaper to produce, which is why its production, and consequently, the equipping of the anti-tank soldiers with PTRD happened more quickly. The soldiers themselves preferred the PTRD over the PTRS, primarily due to the weight of the rifle. The PTRS weighed 22 kilograms compared to 17.5 kilograms for the PTRD. This particular difference was especially felt during foot marches, when soldiers could cover up to 10 kilometers a day. It is also worth noting that the penal soldiers, just like regular soldiers, enjoyed using captured German weapons. However, this was not widespread. In conclusion, I will say that over the course of modern history, the topic of penal battalions has accumulated a vast number of different speculations and myths. The misconceptions about the catastrophic shortage of weapons in the penal battalions and the use of bayonet charges are another similar myth. What other weapons do you think were used in the Soviet penal battalions? Share your opinion in the comments, like the video, and subscribe to my channel. All of this will greatly help its promotion.